Josh Pate, overtime in college football is perfection. It's my favorite overtime in all of sports. Better than PKs, better than shootouts. Blaine Patine, I see coming out now. Dark Josh. I want to see no aspect of it change, but I will give you an opportunity to change my mind and say your piece, please.
Well, I don't need to explain myself. I'm right. You're wrong. You need to explain yourself. What's right about this?
No, I absolutely love it. I mean, I don't want to see the ball starting at the 50-yard line. I'm fine with the clock not rolling and just continuing the football game. Line up on the 25-yard line. You get a chance to score. If you do, you can kick the extra point, and your opponent gets a chance to have the football, unlike the NFL in many circumstances that we've seen throughout the years. And then if we do that twice and we're going for two, we distill the sport down to its essence. You line up on the 2-yard line. I'm going to put the football across the goal line. You try and stop me. I love it. What are the most interesting games? When someone goes for two at the end and either gets it or doesn't get it, you're forced to do that in this scenario. I love it. Why would we want to change it?
Well, the circumstance that you just mentioned is like reading me chapter 13 of the book without reading chapters 1 through 12. They're going for two after they did something to score to begin with. They earned the right to score to begin with, which probably means they put together first downs, they moved the chains, they went the length of the field. What makes no sense to me is we've got this game that exists on a 100-yard field, all that land we paid for. And we've got this clock up here, and it runs all game. And then we get to the most consequential time, and we say, we're not going to use any of this, and we're not going to use that thing. And we're just going to, to me, it's like it's randomizing the outcome. It's not that you don't earn it. I'm not saying that Auburn didn't earn the win the other night, but it's so randomized. And the thing that you're doing to earn that win is so detached from the way the rest of the game works. And I agree with you. I'm not looking to model after the NFL. I'm not looking to model anything we do after the NFL. But to me, if you start on the 50-yard line and give the opponent the opportunity to as well, you're not starting in scoring position. Like right now, you start on the 25, I think. So you can go 4th and 10 and you're still in scoring position. To me, you ought to have to do something to get in position to score.
Well, you had to play the whole game, though. You had to play the whole game up to that point. It's not like we're just meeting at mid.
You played it. Yeah, you played and I played, and we played to a draw, which means no one has the upper hand, which means I think that's the way that overtime should work as well. And you can say, oh, it does. Both teams get to alternate the 2 points if you get to the third overtime. That's true. I don't ever think that we should get to that point. I don't even think we should get to the point where we're randomly starting on the 25. I also ask, I have things that are lost by doing it the current way. I don't know what's lost by doing it the way that I'm suggesting, where you start on the 50, both still get an opportunity. It much more resembles what a typical flow of a football game would look like. The only reason they ever adjusted the overtime period was because they didn't want the 7 overtime marathon because of safety of players and everything like that, which I'm okay with. But if you want to shorten it, don't go to this insane alternating 2-point conversion. If you want to shorten it, make someone actually do football, and you'll shorten it significantly because you're not going 4 or 5 overtimes with folks starting at the 50. I guarantee you're not.
I had no problem with the previous overtime in college football, and I wouldn't have suggested changing it. But now that I've seen this iteration where you are forced to go for two, I really like it, and it's balanced and it's fair. And if we're just going to say, well, you start at the 50-yard line, that's arbitrary too. I mean, someone could use your same logic against you and say, well, now you're taking kickoff out of the game. But either way, I will say in practice, when we would have practice, the most important period was goal line. Yeah. Everyone practiced it, and it was the most intense portion of the practice. I like the manifesting that if you've already had a chance in regulation and 2 different overtimes.
You know who does overtime right? College basketball. You know what they say? You got 5 minutes. We're going to tip it up. We're going to tip it up from center court, and y'all are going to play 5 minutes. We may get another overtime. We may not.
It's not as entertaining to me.
No,
I like college football.
I'm just saying, there's no way you watched that Auburn Texas A&M game and it ended like, man, that's.
And thought, man, I'd rather see 10 more minutes of regular play. There's no way.
I agree. I agree with you guys 100%. I will say, one thing I dislike about the way the NFL does it, and again, they've changed it for. Number one, they have 2 different sets of playoff rules, one for the regular season and one for the playoff, which I think is totally asinine to me. If you're going to have one set of overtime rules, have one set of overtime rules. But I do think there's a legitimate argument for both of them. But I still think either way, it is a really, really fun overtime to watch once you start going for 2, because again, we see it all the time. You play the full game. Y'all mentioned it, going for the 2 points, and then sometimes the best option for a team that may not feel good about playing even more snaps and evening it out with the other team. But I think either way, it's pretty damn good.
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, thank you. I would just say this. So they could do alternating paper field goal flicks. And if it's overtime of a college football game, I'm going to watch. I'm going to be entertained by it. So like, does it appeal to me? Does it draw my interest? To me, is detached from, do I think this is the best functioning way to decide the outcome of this game? Because I would be just as glued if you, David just said, well, you're taking kickoffs out of it. Put kickoffs in for all I care and make them go the entire length of the field. Like, I'd be glued to it either way. I'm not saying I'm not entertained. I'm very entertained, gladiator style. I'm just saying the outcome when we resort to that, to me, has always felt detached from like how a football game is actually won. That's all I'm saying.
Well, isn't this too, and Blaine, I don't mean to jump in front of you, but this is a very important point to me, and I want to see what Josh thinks, because he probably agrees with me, I would think. I would assume, even though we know what assuming does. Isn't this a microcosm of the biggest argument we're having in college football overall right now? Is the efficiency argument when it comes to rankings, when it comes to rules and officiating, when it comes to conference realignment, because there's no incentive for anybody at the top to change anything right now, because regardless, here's my money. Here's my money. It doesn't matter if they put 9 teams into the 12-team playoff and 3 of them have 3 losses. We're going to complain. We're going to yell. We're going to say this isn't the most efficient way. I want metrics and numbers we can see, not that's hidden behind some sports analytics company. And then they point me to ESPN, who just so happens to be in a deal with the SEC, to look at those numbers and make it make sense there. Then you look at the FPI and really start asking some questions. But Josh, are we just arguing into the abyss? Because it's more popular than ever now. The only way they can screw it up, I call it the Snickers bar argument. The only way you can screw up a Snickers is if you get overtly political to one side, like we've seen in some professional sports. That's the only way. And guess what? College football ain't doing it. So are we just arguing into the abyss? Are we just yelling it into an echo chamber with each other and nothing's ever going to get changed? Because the money's not getting changed. It's just growing and growing and growing.
Okay, well, first off, I can't believe that you would sit here in front of God and everyone and besmirch the good name of the fill in the advertiser blank playoff predictor on ESPN. I can't believe you can do that. Yeah. I've had this wild theory, and look, we may have to edit this out, but I've had this wild theory that we changed overtime rules not because we cared about player safety at all, but because TV networks got pissed that a 7 overtime game overran into another broadcast window.
Probably.
And we can't have that. Okay. I know that we don't want the players to have boo-boos, but I think there may have been ulterior motivation there. The third thing is, you notice how we had to have a grand total of 1 game go to 7 overtimes before they lurched into action and changed the rule, for the betterment of the game. Yet I watch officiating melt down in fantastic, horrific fashion every Saturday in this sport. And have you gotten an answer? Have any of you heard anything? I gotten an answer? Of course not. Because really, it doesn't affect the bottom line. And the most infantile logic in the room when it comes to college football is actually the most sound logic. If it doesn't mess with the money, they don't really so much care about the integrity and structure of the sport. It doesn't really matter if you, the consumer, are mad, because, like Blaine just said a little while ago, in a different vein, but what he said applies to their logic. Hey, as long as you're watching, then what we're presenting must be good enough, which sucks. There's nothing that would make me not watch college football. That's not always coinciding with making the right decisions for the sport.
Well, I certainly don't want to be the guy who's defending the Rules and Regulations Committee or the corporatist decisions behind it. Just on overtime in particular, overtime is detached from regulation, so I'm fine if the format's a bit detached. I like a puck shootout in the NHL. I don't care if they keep playing for 10 minutes. That's just my thing, but I'm not going to sit here and always defend the Rules and Regulations Committee.
Y'all Michigan guys, 231 you buy one quarterback and then you start defending the monster.
College football deep state, I guess.
Hey, YouTube, look, we're getting close to the playoffs. Stop messing around. Hit subscribe if you hadn't. If not, go be wrong somewhere else.